Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Nurses Week events. Happy Nurses Week. My name is Dr. Danielle McCamey, and I'm the founder, CEO, and president of DMPs of Color. As DMPs of Color, our mission is to build community and create opportunities through networking, mentorship, and advocacy to increase diversity in doctoral studies, clinical practice, and leadership. And our ultimate vision is to inspire, empower, and transform the landscape of nursing to increase diversity in doctoral nursing practice. It is an honor and privilege tonight to introduce our speaker, Wendy Garvin Mayo. I almost want to say doctor, so let me know when you're ready to have that DMP discussion. Wendy Garvin Mayo is a board certified nurse practitioner, stress solution strategist, international speaker, #1 best-selling author, and certified John Maxwell trainer coach with 20 plus years in the healthcare industry. She has healthcare experience in various nursing sectors, including clinical, leadership, research, academia, and pharmaceuticals. Mrs. Mayo is the CEO of the Stress Blueprint, creator of Stress Blueprint Academy, and Stress Solution Series, and the host of the Nurse Wellness Podcast. Wendy's passion for empowering individuals on the importance of stress management has her featured in various print and televised media to further her message to impact more lives. She wants every opportunity to advocate for stress management so people can optimize their overall well-being. Thank you, Wendy, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm listening to the bio like, who's that? But hopefully next spring I will have the doctor, the DMP. So I'm working on it.
We calling it, baby. Yes.
So thank you so much for having me, Dr. McCamey. Thank you all for being here, for sharing your evening with me. My name is Wendy Garvin Mayo. I am a nurse practitioner in the Stress Solution Strategist, and I am so passionate about stress management because I have seen stress management transform lives. So before we get started, and I know we're virtual and people are zoomed out, but I want this to be interactive. I want us to really have a discussion, and you can do that by turning on your camera or just get in the chat. I want to get in the chat. So how many of you right now are stressed? Put it in the chat for me. Yes, no, you can put a Y at N, raise your hand. Let me see ya. How many of you are stressed? Yes, LaDonna, Dr. McCamey. Yes, Roberta, a little, managing it better. That's awesome, Roberta. That's awesome. All right, so how long have you been stressed? Hours, days, weeks, months,
years.
How long have you been stressed? All the time, years, yes. Okay. And how many of you have a stress management blueprint? And blueprint is really a plan of action. That's what it is. We have blueprints for different aspects of our lives, but how many of you have a blueprint for stress management? Yes. Depends on the day and the times. Yes. Okay. Nope, no blueprint. I don't. Yeah, many people don't have blueprints for stress or stress management. And that's because as a society, we normalize stress, right? So if we normalize it, we don't see the significance of stress, or we don't think it's that important. So if you don't think it's important, it's not necessarily important to have a blueprint or to do something about it, right? So despite us knowing the implications of stress, we still don't put anything in place for it. And we know stress is associated with anxiety, depression, suicide, substance abuse, high blood pressure, diabetes, impotence for men, infertility, miscarriages, reduced immune system, right? Even cancer. We already know that, but because society normalizes it, we don't even think about that, right? So, and the thing that we always talk about is how stress impacts us mentally and physically. I like to talk about how stress impacts our ability to be successful, our ability to fully show up in the world, our ability to really align with our purpose and have impact, our ability to lead as nurses, as doctors. It impacts all of that, but we don't really think about it in that way. I want to tell you a little story of how I got into doing this work. Now, many people see me as a leader, someone that's very decisive, have impact, influence. But when the pandemic hit last year, not last year, but in March of 2020, I didn't recognize myself. I was paralyzed by stress because my image was in question. I was working as a clinical scientist at home, just had my new baby boy, my new husband, and life was great. The pandemic hit and I was paralyzed. I was afraid because I had to make a decision. Do I play it safe and stay here in my house with my family? Or do I honor myself and my profession and go back to the front lines in the middle of a global pandemic? To take care of cancer patients, I had to make that decision. I was wrestling, and I wrestled for a while with it. But the stress had me so bogged down and paralyzed. And what it was really doing is it was preventing me from aligning with my purpose. I always say that time in my life, I was wrestling with purpose because we all know the right thing to do. It's right here in our gut. Many times we don't quiet down enough or long enough to listen to it or even hear it. So I struggled through that for a while. And then I heard the words of my grandfather. And it's so interesting because these words he told me when I graduated from nursing school in 2004. Never even thought of them until this time in my life in 2020. And he said to me, in this chapter of your life, you have to set your sail. Those words released me and really empowered me to make the decision to return to the front lines in the middle of a global pandemic, despite being a new mother, a new wife, my mother telling me, not a great idea, I did it. The most important thing about that story is, yes, I was stressed. Yes, I was paralyzed. Yes, I was afraid. But that one decision released me and showed me things about myself that I didn't even know I was capable of. I started serving on a level that I couldn't even imagine. Started serving cancer caregivers, nurses, healthcare providers, showing them how to manage their stress to really just align with their purpose or just fully show up. I didn't know I could start a business. I didn't know I would be out here speaking internationally. Didn't know I'd be an author. That one decision released me. That's the importance of stress management. See, we sometimes have the tendency to allow stress, however it shows up for you, whether it shows up as limiting beliefs, negative self-talk, imposter syndrome, people prevent us from fully showing up. And that's a problem because you showing up may save someone's life, regardless of where you are in your career. If you're not fully showing up, you are not fully sharing your gifts with the world. And I know everyone who can hear my voice has a gift to share with the world. So it's not about just being stressed and, the anxiety, depression, and all the health ailments. That's important, but more so important is you living full out, you aligning with your purpose, you finding your purpose, you serving at your optimal level. It's hard to do that if you're stressed. right? It's hard to do that, but we don't think about it because we normalize it. I've been stressed for days, weeks, years, someone put in the chat. That's a problem. That's a problem because it's not only impacting your health, but it's impacting how you show up in the world. How many of you have ever allowed stress to keep you from making a decision? How many of you? Let me see. Let me see in the chat. How many of you have allowed stress from prevent you from making a decision? Yes, yes, we all have. We all have. So crafting a stress blueprint is so important. It's so much more than, oh, I have the back pain, I have the headaches, I have all these things. But it's really about you showing up. So I want to talk about what is stress? What is it? So stress is a biological response to a stressor, whether it's internal or external, right? And it creates imbalance in hormones, adrenaline, cortisol in our systems, and we get all the symptoms. But what we don't talk about is how it shifts things in our lives. It creates an imbalance in some part of our lives that we don't really think about because we're just in it. I like to call it the stress cycle. We're just in it. So we don't even know what part of our lives is impacted. We just know we're stressed, right? But it creates an imbalance in some part of our lives. And it's caused by internal or external stressors. Many stressors that cause stress are external. Those are things we can't control. The number one external stressor is what? What do you think it is? What do you think it is, the number one stressor? External. It's people. We want to control people. We can't control people, right? We can't control life situations, things that happen. But many times, it's a big cause of our stress, right? Then we have internal stressors, which we have more control over. These are things that are happening internally, like our thoughts, our limiting beliefs, like we talked about earlier. Because our thoughts impact our beliefs, which impacts our behavior, which impacts our outcomes. So that's why we have to do the work to manage stress. That's why it's so important. So crafting your stress management blueprint is so important. And let me ask you a question. Who taught you about stress or stress management? Was it a conversation at your dinner table? Who taught you about it? Was it your mother, your father, your aunt? Who taught you about it? Because in nursing school, we never talked about stress, even though nursing school was very stressful, at least for me. Can you relate to that? It was one of the most stressful years of my life, undergraduate. We didn't talk about it there. We didn't talk about stress management there. But we don't talk about it. Trina, learned on my own. Yeah, it's not something we talk about because, again, we normalize it as a society. No one's talking to kids about it. So what happens when a pandemic hits and our whole life shifts? What happens? How do we cope with that? We need our stress blueprint to cope with that. And the stress blueprint changes as well, but we have to allow ourselves the time and space to reevaluate the stressors in our life, to reevaluate our blueprint. Very important. And time and space is something we don't always allow ourselves to do. The clients I work with, I always tell them, you have to create the gap. You have to create the gap. Create that gap to pause, pivot, plan, or proceed. Many times we are just proceeding without even really thinking about what we're doing. We have to create the gap. And especially for us, when I say us, I'm talking about DMPs of color, people of color, because we experience more stressors than our counterparts because of racism and discrimination. It layers on racism and discrimination. How many of you can relate to that? How many of you can relate to feeling discriminated against or encounter a racist person? That's outside of the stresses of your life, right? And having a doctorate or wearing a stethoscope or having letters behind your name or, putting on your white coat or having a position that calls you director, dean, CEO doesn't prevent that. Racism and discrimination is something we experience probably on a daily basis for some of us, depending on where we are. How many of you have heard of the National Commission to Address Racism in Nursing? Yeah, have you heard of it? Roberta, yes. Yeah. No. Yeah, so the National Commission to Address Racism in Nursing, it was put together by a few nursing organizations, and they did a survey of about a little over 5,000 nurses, and really to see how racism was impacting nurses. And 63% of the participants said they experienced acts of racism in the workplace. Now, who do you think they experienced racism by? Who do you think was a part of that experience for these nurses? Who do you think? Who was racist or they experienced discrimination? Was it patients? Was it colleagues? Supervisors? Yes, all right. Number one was leaders. 2, patients, and 3, coworkers. Absolutely. And these are things we're dealing with. And, many of the participants said that it impacts their well-being. It impacts their well-being. So on top of all the other stressors, we're dealing with racism and discrimination. More so important for us to have a stress management blueprint. And sometimes that blueprint can call for some courageous conversations. But if we're stressed, we're not ready to have those conversations, right? So stress management is so important. So I want you to do something. I want you to take out some paper and a pen, because I want you to leave here with something that you can implement in your life. Anytime I do any talks, I don't like people to just listen. I want you to leave here feeling empowered to take action in your life. And I'll share a quick little, not story, but people always say like, oh, I hate mindfulness and I hate meditation, because those are really evidence-based ways to manage your stress. And what I always tell clients is that, being mindful, right? So mindful breathing puts you in control of your breath, but it also puts you in control of your life. It's spending time with self. And if we can't do that, we have to question why. Why don't we want to spend time with ourselves? Do we not want to think about the problems? But what is it? But mindfulness breathing is so simple and puts us in control, because many times, if not all, when we are stressed, we feel like we don't have control. Can you relate to that? You feel like you don't have control, that imbalance. And if we don't manage our stress, we feel more out of control, because what happens is I'm stressed in this part of my life, but it starts bleeding into other parts of your life, right? The longer it lasts, it starts to bleed into other parts of your life. And I'm not saying that stress is all a bad thing, right? We know stress, the stress response, we're all healthcare providers here. but that's important. I'm talking about the chronic stress. That's why I asked, how long have you been stressed? Because that chronic stress can be dangerous. And it's dangerous because sometimes we don't even know when we have entered it. We don't even know we're chronically stressed because we normalize it, right? And many times, the more stressed we are, the more we think we're doing or accomplishing. But I always say when we're stressed, we're giving power to someone or something. I'll say that again. When we are stressed, we're giving power to someone or something. So creating your blueprint is going to help you take your power back. So I'm going to share a couple of things with you. If you can take out your pen, your pencil, or type it up, because I want you to have this. And after we leave here tonight, I want you to look at this piece of paper that you were going to write on. And I just want you to think about it. Create a gap for yourself to really think and process and figure out what can you do to start creating your stress management blueprint. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to write down, what are you stressed about? What stressor is really stressing you out? Write it down. And you may have more than one, which is fine. You can write all of them down. Let's 3, because we don't want to be here all night. You start listing everything out, right? 3, your top 3. And then you have 3. I want you to circle the number 1 stressor, the thing that's causing you the most stress. And after you've done that, put done in the chat so I can see that you're done. Or raise your hand, give me an emoji, give me something to let me know that you're done. Thank you. All right. Next, I want you to close your eyes. Many of you have your camera off, so close your eyes or just lower your head for a minute. And I want you to think about, what would your life be if you can eliminate or alleviate the stressor? What could your life be if you can alleviate or eliminate the stressor? And again, let me see done when you're done with that. Thank you, Dr. Powell. Trina, thank you. Dwayne, thank you. Adana. Stacy, yes, thank you. Next, I want you to think about, what do you need to help you eliminate or reduce the stressor? I want you to think about 5 things you can do for 5 minutes for 5 days. What is it that you can do? I want you to think of 5 things, nothing huge, 5 things that are realistic that you can do for 5 minutes for 5 days. That's 25 minutes of your life. And we're thinking about stress management in terms of micro shifts, as I like to call them. Not like you're going to do one thing and it's all going to be gone. Micro shifts. Example can be, you are going to take 5 minutes a day to yourself to just be, to think about, what am I doing? Am I aligned? Do I need to make a shift? Do I need to pivot? Do I need pause? Do I need to take time off? 5 minutes. Or it can be, I'm going to journal. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to spend time with my kids. I'm going to make that phone call. I'm going to resign from that job. 5 minutes. And then the next step is, when are you going to start implementing this? When are you going to start implementing the 5 things that you wrote down? And because I am who I am, I want to see the date. I want to see when in the chat, please, if you don't mind. When? When are you going to start implementing this? I have already started, Roberta. That's very good. Very good. Already started. Nicole, yes, that's good. Same. Anyone else? Did anyone's heart start beating fast, like the accountability? Because many times we know what to do, but sometimes we need accountability. We want accountability to make sure we're implementing it. So you already started. So now, how do you stay on track? Tell me how you're going to stay on track. Nicole, Roberta, Dwayne, Trina, how are you going to stay on track to really reach the goal? Do you have an accountability partner? Do you check in? Use accountability partners? Yes. Started but need to sustain it. That is so important, Angela. It's very easy to start, but the sustainability of it is so important. So there are 3 things I always say to make it sustainable. Husband, children, friends. No, and they hold me accountable and support. Yes. I have a checklist and track. Yes, tracker. Thank you, Dwayne. 3 things, and you've mentioned it here. You need support. Support is important. You need support, positive support. Accountability and community. Those are the 3 things you need to really make it sustainable. And when I say community, think about the people that's in your community that you allow into your space. Think about the relationships, the friends, the colleagues, because not everybody wants you to live full out. And we can talk about that another time. But be mindful of who is supporting you, who's your accountability partner, and who's in your community. So what we just did there is we created a mini blueprint for you. So now that you have that, you can get started. You can get started or keep going, because some people have started already. But I think it's important to really keep in mind the why. What could your life be like if you could eliminate or alleviate that stressor? That's going to be important. So I ask you to look at the list, keep it front and center, but that why, I want you to put that on a Post-it. Put it on your computer screen or your desk where you can see it. I want you to look at that frequently, because that's going to keep you going too. That's your motivation. Because that can be more time with your kids, more time with your husband, make an impact in your career, make an impact in the lives of the people you serve. That can be your motivation as well. So I want to thank you all for your attention. And I want to know if you have any questions before I hand it back over to Dr. McKamey. So before I hand it over, what's your takeaway from this talk? Can you put your takeaway, your aha, or something that was put to the forefront of your mind? What was your takeaway from this discussion tonight?
Wendy, I'm curious what your 5 things that you do for 5 minutes for 5 days are.
So I like to journal. I like to meditate. I actually just joined a meditation series where I'm trying to do that more. So powerful. But those are my things. Time alone is what helps me manage my stress. I have to step away. I need the time alone. No one, just me and myself to process. And the shower, that's my place. That's where things come together. I get the best ideas. And I know when I'm stressed, I can go take a nice hot shower. And I'm gonna come out that shower feeling very different. Please report the P's. So a gap to pause, pivot, plan, or pursue. Yes. Help to reinforce. Yep. Need community support, possibly why. Awesome. Yes. Doing things outside of nursing really helps too. Dwayne, that is so spot on. So spot on. Yeah. Because I think when we're nurses, like, I mean, we're nurses at heart, right? We work so hard and it's like you want to be in your career, but you got to look at life outside of that. Yeah. So hobbies, like what are your hobbies? What are your hobbies? Yeah, that's very, very important, but so hard to think about for some people, like getting out of nursing school, because you're so busy getting acclimated to the role and want to make impact and do all these things. But yeah, yes. I love art too. I love painting and I'm not good at it, but it's therapeutic. Importance of community. Yep. Show slides living in. Yep. Those are all really, really, really good. Awesome. And I think, the take home here is that managing your stress is so much more than just the mental and physical impact it has on our bodies, but it's really about us showing up and impacting the world in all aspects of our life, professionally and personally. So thank you so much for your time. And I'll pass it back to you, Dr. McKamey.
Thank you so much, future Wendy Garvin Mayo, doctor. Thank you all for your participation tonight. Just want to elevate that we have one more event for Nurses Week, which I just put in the chat, and it will be a lively Q&A discussion around diversity and inclusion, or tokens, a Q&A discussion with Dr. Ketchy and colleagues. So please register for that. Also, please save the date for our upcoming hybrid conference that will be in Baltimore, Maryland. It will be the weekend of October 21 through 23. More details to follow. And we also have our virtual commencement that will be on June 18th at 11 a.m. with Dr. Willina Gould as our commencement speaker. So thank you all again for joining us, and we hope to see you tomorrow at our event. Take care. Bye-bye.